Okay, so there's two elements of this question. Are there different levels of trauma, or is it that different things just affect people differently, and therefore trauma is trauma and it affects the brain? And how does that trauma physically impact on the brain?
I guess trauma is our reaction to a certain event. And so we will all experience that differently, to different levels, to different magnitudes, for different durations. Different things will trigger us. For me, every single thing that reminded me of him triggered a trauma response, and I went into fight or flight. A black car, because he drove a black car. The smell of coffee, because that's how we started our day. White Sheridan sheets, because that's what we slept on. Helicopters, because he was a helicopter pilot. Like the sight of an Asian woman, because that was the nationality that he was biasly picking. So everything would trigger fight or flight, and I'd go into a panic attack. And the thing that happens in the brain is the brain's not actually aware of the memory of something and the actual thing at the moment when it comes to trauma. So what happens when somebody who's experiencing a traumatic trigger, they don't know the difference between it's happening, like it's happened a while ago, or it's happening right now. It feels like it's happening right now all over again. And that's why there's the panic attacks. And, that's why, like war veterans, for example, if they hear a pop of a champagne, it can trigger a trauma response in them and they feel like they're in the battlefield again. The brain doesn't make that link.
If you look at a brain under imaging that's got PTSD, is there any physical signs of the trauma?
Yeah, there are. So it's called trauma brain. It's a thing. And essentially the prefrontal cortex, which is that logical part of our brain that sits just, behind our forehead, that has got a slower or a reduced activation. And then we've got the amygdala, which is the emotional part of our brain, that's got a higher activation. So now you're using less logical brain, more emotional brain. And this happens simultaneously. And so that's another reason why it's really hard to logically talk yourself out of an emotional response. You can't just say, well, yes, that is a black car, but it's not his black car. All you're thinking is black car, it could be him. Oh my gosh. And then your body just goes into fight or flight. So yes, the brain does change. And unfortunately, it changes long term. Trauma brain can impact someone for the rest of their life. We can certainly do things to try to reverse some of those effects. But trauma brain is real. For me, it's been over 3 years. And although I've learned really well how to, manage triggers, there are still times where I get an adrenaline dump and I'm like, okay, like I know that the person I'm with isn't experiencing that. I'm experiencing this because this is my trauma.